How you doing? This is Coach DeCarlo, and we're going to be speaking with Abiola Abrams, and she's going to be talking about her book, From Imagination to Reality. And this is really going to take us on a journey, the mystic Abdullah, Neville Goddard's teacher, but we're going to do more than that. We're going to really deep dive into manifestation and law of attraction, whatever you call it, law of assumption. We're going to discuss all those things, and we're going to let you know how these things apply to you. Abiola, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Coach DeCarlo. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. Listen, I did some research, of course, and there's a wealth of information. Anybody that wants to find out about you, I mean, only thing they have to do is put your name out there on Google, for example, and all this information just populates and pops up. So how did this journey begin?
So like all of us, there are many different beginnings, right? So it just depends on which which part of the beginning. I can say, well, it began in a hospital in New York City many years ago. But the most recent part of this journey, my manifesting journey, if you will, begins actually in high school. I was fortunate enough that my father had gone to a conference, and he would go to these conferences and bring home papers and paperwork and stuff like that, and stuff for just to throw it there and leave it there. And he had actually, Zig Ziglar had spoken at this conference that he was at, that he attended. It was like, I think in either the late 80s or early 90s. I was a kid. And he brought home this paperwork, and something about like seeing these affirmations, these positive statements, the way that they were, it did something to my brain. Like I hadn't witnessed that before. I hadn't experienced that before. I'm a girl from New York City who heard things like, well, if it's not working out, you got to put an H on your back and handle it. Like that was like straight up like how we rolled, how we moved, at that time. I'm from the lights, stay out until the street lights come on generation, drinking water from the hose, key around my neck, going to school generation. And so something about, reading statements like every day in every way, things are working out for me. Like, wow, I am worthy and deserving of all great things. Wow. These kinds of statements for me, like lit something up in my brain. And I wasn't aware that it would end up so many years later being this journey. But as a kid, as an adolescent who was having, troubles, getting along with folks in school and all kinds of things like that, being an adolescent is hard, most of us anyway. And, for me, that really lit something up inside of me. And I think that because I had a lot of challenges with self-worth and self-love and self-esteem growing up, it always propelled me to look toward personal development works, things that could help me move out of that space and move into a more positive space. So that is, if we, there are other beginnings closer in the journey, but that is a beginning.
Thank you for that. Now, it's funny because a lot of times in our journeys, we think that, I was hearing some of my story in your story, and what I realize is how universal the story is. And I think a lot of times people listen to other people's story and they think that, that person's special, they're unique, and God won't use me and so forth. But God will use anyone that's open and willing. Is that what you find?
Absolutely, 1,000,000,000%. And you said it exactly the way that I always say it, is that, we look at folks, people may look at you and be like, okay, Coach DeCarlo's on a show. He's got it all figured out. Easy for him, or Abiola, easy for her. But everybody, I just right now just send love to everyone for your silent struggles that no one else is seeing. And God will absolutely use any and every one of us.
Absolutely.
Any and every one of us. It's up to us to open our hearts, to open our spirit, to say, I want more. I'm ready for more. Like those words, like if right now, if you're watching this and all you can muster up the confidence, the courage, the energy to say is, I am ready, you will become used. You will be a vessel of who knows what. Who knows what.
Absolutely. You said something that made me think what we don't realize is our struggle is often our greatest asset. Do you find that to be so?
It absolutely is. The things that we run from, our vulnerability, our struggles, our challenges, that is absolutely your superpower, whatever it is that you are running from. There is someone who can be empowered by your story. There is someone who, we all have different callings. For some people, it may be a bigger platform like you have, but for some people, it may be in their church or on their block or in their family or whatever, to empower the people around them. And so you don't have to, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just see the step in front of you. So if the step in front of you is, okay, I want to manifest X, Y, and Z, allowing yourself to be in the energy of, okay, I deserve that. Rather than, a lot of us, and particularly, folks that look like you and I, are afraid to dream even big dreams, and keep puny dreams, keep small dreams. And then, unfortunately, I want to say a lot of folks tend to then want to reach out and keep the people around them small. Absolutely. So if you're watching this, you have a vision, you have goals, you have dreams, that is magnificent. Know that those are coming through you from the Most High. Absolutely. And then don't try to convince other people to get on board with your vision. Yep. It was given to you. It's your vision. They don't even believe in themselves. How are they going to believe in you? So move forward with your own vision, your manifestations, each and every one of us. And this really shifted things for me, Coach DeCarlo, realizing that our manifestations, each and every one of us, the things that we desire are part of evolutionary consciousness, are part of making this whole world greater. So it may seem like, well, but how can the things that I want and the things that I desire make the world greater? If we look around at the things around us, everything around us started in someone's imagination. Absolutely. Everything around us started in someone's vision. And so, every single one of us has a part to play.
Absolutely. And that's beautiful that it's been said. One of the master teachers says, listen, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. Like I said, your name speaks of wealth. I mean, Abiola means wealth, abundance, prosperity. You said something, I want to touch on it for the listener. Take the first step. It may be starting that channel. It may be writing that first paragraph for that book. And speaking of that book, let's talk about from imagination to reality. How was this birth?
So I'm so excited about getting to talk about this book. Like, you have no idea, like, for me, like, this has absolutely been a labor of love, and to be able to talk to someone who gets it, who is like, okay, who is equally as excited about these conversations. Oh my goodness, this is a manifestation right now. Like let's just acknowledge it. This, for me, us having this conversation, you and I, is a manifestation. Wow. And so this book for me is very interesting. God will find you no matter where you are. So once you have been and you've said those words, I am ready, you cannot hide. You can run, and many of us try to sabotage ourselves, but you cannot hide. And so I was dealing with, Coach DeCarlo, a heartbreak, a breakup, drama situation. And I went to go, hide out at my parents' house for a while. I lived in Harlem, New York until very recently, and my parents live in another part of New York. I'm a New Yorker, born and raised. And I went to go hang out at my parents' house, and I would come out on their porch and be journaling and stuff like that while dealing with, mending my heart. And I would always say hello and be talking to, conversating, as we say over here, conversating with, my mom's mailman, Mr. Steve. Okay. And Steve, very interestingly enough, started to tell me about Neville Goddard. Wow. And he said, he said, you have a positive mind, a positive spirit. He said, you have to read about Neville Goddard. Mm-hmm. And I'd already read some of like New Thought, wisdom from other teachers. Florence Scovel Shen, I was familiar with her work. And at that moment, I was having a know-it-all moment. We've all had know-it-all moments. Lose your know-it-all moments, because Absolutely. The moment you're closed and you think you can know it all, you keep evolving. So I was like, yeah, I know all about that. I know all about that stuff, Steve. I had even led, a couple of, circles and talk. I know all of it. I know all of it. And interestingly enough, at the same time, I was listening to the late great Dr. Wayne Dyer. At the same time, he had a show on Hay House Radio at the time it was called, and used to come on at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York, where I live. And so I used to listen to his show, and then I heard Dr. Dyer say, he said he wrote his most recent book at that time about the teachings from Neville Goddard, named, Wishes Fulfilled, okay, which is from a Neville Goddard quote. And I said, oh, wow. Okay. All right. God is trying to tell me something. Okay. Let me pay attention. Let me look into this. And so I started to look into Neville Goddard. And it was very interesting because I learned that he was from Barbados in the West Indies. And initially, I got to share with you, straight up, and I have everybody in my friend group, friends of all backgrounds. But initially that turned me off because I figured, okay, he is, a European person from Barbados, and a European person from, where my family is from, may have had a role in colonizing or enslaving, not them directly, but their families with my family. Yeah. And so initially I was like, this kind of like turned me off a little bit. But luckily I pressed forward and kept on reading. And my soul lit up from his teaching. Yeah. And then, of course, when I learned about Abdullah, the person who was his mentor, he was Abdullah's apprentice. That, of course, opened my whole soul up and my whole energy up. And I knew that at that time, like most of us, most of y'all listening, whatever background you're from, I know that once we hear Abdullah's energy is so powerful, once any of us hears anything about him, we become like Abdullahites. We want to know more. We go on a search. We want to know more. And I knew at that time that I was going to write a book about, as a writer, that I needed to write a book about Abdullah. But it wasn't until, to be honest with you, it wasn't until maybe about a year and a half ago or so that it became urgent in my spirit that the time is now, that you got to get this out right now. It became very urgent in my spirit, as if, Abdullah was speaking to me himself and saying, okay, come on, baby girl, we're going to write this. We got to get it out there, because as we know, he didn't leave much of a paper trail. Absolutely. And I felt like I was being called by this great ancestor to put these words together and put it there for future generations. That African cultures, by and large, are oral tradition, oral history culture, where history was passed down through what I call oral literature. And we are now in a different era, that worked for that era and is still a beautiful art and a beautiful thing. In this era, the information plus age, things need to be recorded in a different way. And so I very much see that, okay, I was for him, the scribe to help just to take those teachings, a griot, as is in our tradition, the storyteller, to take those teachings and put them forward for the next age, so that when other folks come and have that call, like, Abdullah, who's this? I want to know more. There it is. Boom. Here it is. His knowledge is all there.
You said something, and I'm curious. I've done research trying to find what I could. How were you able to compile this book with such limited? Was it the spirit of Abdullah speaking through you? How did that manifest as far as the book itself coming into fruition?
So it was a number of different kinds of research. There was spiritual research. Okay. There was the research of, as you said, Abdullah definitely speaking directly through me. And then there was good old-fashioned academic research. Okay. The book that I wrote, that's one book right before this, is named African Goddess Initiation. Okay. And in that book, I did research into all of, a large part of the, throughout the 52 plus countries of Africa, the divine feminine religions and spiritual traditions. And so in many ways, that prepared me for this journey, that it's something that for me, I'm a geek, I'm an academic, it's something that it prepared me. I feel like everything that I've done, my schooling, everything prepared me for this journey. And so I not only did, the surface level research, but I went in and took the teachings of Abdullah's disciples and the disciples of his disciples. So, for example, Reverend Ike, who used to have a church in Harlem, before I was born, he had he was a disciple of Neville Goddard, who was a
Absolutely.
disciple of Abdullah, and his teachings were directly derived from Abdullah. And so taking those teachings, just like if you take any great spiritual teacher, the greatest of the great, it's passed down through their disciples. Jesus didn't write a book, right? But his disciples wrote a book. His disciples wrote their books, which were combined and compiled into the New Testament. So it's the same sort of thing. Taking the teachings of that his disciples and the disciples of his disciples learned from him. And a very interesting thing is that because for me, I didn't know that day when I was listening to Neville Goddard and listening to my mom's mailman talk about Neville Goddard that I would be at Hay House at the same publisher, then putting out this teaching. But the lineage then becomes, Wayne Dyer was a student of Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard was a student of Abdullah. Louise Hay, who started Hay House, she also is a part of that lineage. And so it's a beautiful and wonderful thing just to watch, the hand of the divine at play.
And it's amazing when you speak even of Hay House, how many of the teachers like Joe Vitale and so forth have been influenced. Jack Canfield, I can go on and listen to different people, have been influenced by Neville Goddard. Neville has given birth to so many students. Many of the students don't even know that their origin is Neville, let alone Abdullah. A lot of people stop at Neville because, of course, they think that, Neville came up with all the information that he can. But Neville, like us, was an avid student.
Yes.
So he was continuously learning. He talked about his library and having to get rid of books and things like that. So he took the foundation, Neville took the foundation of Abdullah and he built upon it. And likewise with us. So I love that you compiled and did your research and pulled from all these great teachers to compile this book. What is it that the student that's looking to grow, what will they take from this book?
So an interesting thing is that when I started to do the research of Abdullah and, his knowledge, I went back and did research into, the foundational Ethiopian spiritualities and, saw that, even before the Abrahamic religions came and combined with the knowledge of the indigenous Ethiopian philosophies, that this is ancient African philosophy and ancient spiritual thought available for everyone and of use to everyone. And so what I want people to take away from this is that they are worthy and deserving of creating and manifesting their dreams, that they are worthy and deserving of having a vision for themselves and their lives, and don't limit your idea of what is for you. The most limiting words that we can say are, which I think I actually said in this conversation, but people like us or people like us, if you're saying that in a positive way, like we did here, that's great. But if you're saying it in a way like, like I heard a lot growing up, oh, people like us don't do that. Exactly. People like us don't go there. People like us don't eat that. People like us can't do it. People, that kind of thing. It restricts you. It keeps you small. It doesn't allow room for you to grow. And we live at the most beautiful, even with all the things wrong in the world, we live the most beautiful and spectacular moment where we have the world at our fingertips. Yeah. And the last thing we want to do is make it smaller by, constricting our vision and our view of it.
Yeah.
Very exciting times we live in.
I agree. And even as I know that when they delve into your words, the book and so forth, more than people like us or them or they or whatever, God in us, and as a people, that was something that was ingrained. And of course, then a lot of it was removed by religion. God ceased to be within us and he was out there somewhere. And even like I stated earlier, your name being wealth and abundance and prosperity, many of us believe that we're going to get ours on the hereafter. But the master teacher, Jesus, said, listen, I've come that you might have life more abundantly, not in the hereafter, but here and now. And God says, my plans for you is to prosper you, to give you a hope in the future. Let's talk about that, because money seems to be very taboo in the Neville Goddard community. If you talk about coaching or charging for services, but even in the minority community and so forth, we've been so indoctrinated that money's bad, money's evil. How do we help people realize that they are their abundance?
Oh, I love this conversation, Coach DeCarlo. We can talk about this. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And in fact, in the book, I have a whole section that's devoted to the teachings that came through Reverend Ike, who I had only heard negative things about.
Me too.
I'd heard, he's a prosperity preacher and he's, out for self, and he was all of this and that, like very negative things. But, again, like, I'm a geek, I'm a researcher, I'm an academic at heart. And so I went to my community. I lived in Harlem. Yeah. Harlem is a lot of old folks who were there. Somebody's had to attend church with the Reverend Ike. So I started to speak to my neighbors and find out, like, did they hate him? Was he trying to really take from the community, like people say? And my neighbors, were overwhelmingly positive about Reverend Ike. And they said, no, it's not like that at all. Don't believe what they're telling you. They said, one of my neighbors, he directly said, Mr. Otis, he said it wasn't like that at all. They said people were just mad because he was putting us on and telling us how to get ours. That's Absolutely. What Mr. Otis said. And Reverend Ike, one of the chants that he had in his church was, the words that you just said, which was, thank you, God in me. He would have them chant that. Thank you, God in me. And, for folks who are listening to this, I want you to get something that's very, very, get something very clear. The idea of you will look for your joy in the life hereafter and not here in the present was something that was specifically created, not by accident, but by men who sat in a room and thought of ways to be able to use that beautiful Bible to hold you back.
Absolutely.
And said, okay, this is great. This is what we can tell them in order to make them not want more now, that they will get theirs, but just not right now. And so when we see ourselves as the reflection of the divine and the Most High, which we are, that is a reflection of prosperity, of abundance, of wealth. And it should feel good when you invest in yourself through someone else. Money is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be exchanged, Absolutely. To be shared. If you look at a field of flowers, it is abundant. It is rich. It is prosperous. The Bible doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money, meaning that when you leave behind the love of us as human beings is the root of all evil. And in fact, most folks know that Jesus was prosperous, and that spiritual teachers, my great-grandmother, for example, was in Guyana, South America, where the majority of my family is from. It has deep roots from for the past 300 years or so. She was a midwife and a women's fertility healer. They didn't use that language, women's fertility healer, but that's what she did. She helped women with, their fertility challenges. And she was called Ma. And Ma was paid in chickens and goats and, that sort of thing. And the community would, when she did something, that's how they paid her, in eggs and whatever it is. And I remember I was talking to a group of Guyanese people from my culture about this concept of money and spirituality, which they were not open to at all. And I said to them, chickens, eggs, goats was the currency of her day.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't that she was, that money is bad and she was not taking money. That was money. There is no difference between that and somebody exchanging a credit card, whether if they're on the banks of Senegal, if they were exchanging, a cake or whatever, it's the currency. And as we see currency shifts from, cowrie shells to Bitcoin to whatever it is. And if you tell yourself that it's not creative to make money, or it's not spiritual to make money, or it's not, whatever it is, you are holding yourself outside of the current of abundance that really is your birthright. Really is your birthright. And if we think about, I have a daughter who's 2 years old. I want my daughter to prosper beyond belief. If we think about with our earthly children, how we want them to thrive, do you really feel like your heavenly parents, your heavenly family want you to struggle? No, the same way that I want everything for my daughter, everything is wanted for each and every one of us.
Absolutely. You said something about money, and I think a lot of us miss this, that money is symbolic. So whether we're talking about rice, a rock, a diamond,
Yes.
gold, coins, it's symbolic of an agreement between two spirits, two or more spirits. So I say my spirit in me says to your spirit that we will do this exchange. And we call the currency money, whatever, but really it's an exchange of spirits. You understand? My energy is exchanging for your energy something that I find of value, and you provide whatever that thing is. If you understand that money, they call it currency.
Currency. That's what I was going to say. You got to plug in currency, the current energy.
Absolutely. It's energy. And so, but again, it goes back to that meeting, several meetings that people have had to make sure to keep the masses in the dark. Yes. If I can make money evil, if I can make money something you're going to get on the hereafter, then what that means is for those few, it simply means more money, more control for them. And so it's wonderful. Now, I was reading through some of the information, and you said something that, what is that tidbit, that insight that you glean from the teachings of Abdullah that is going to surprise the reader?
Well, very interestingly enough, there is a section that I have that is specifically about money. There is a section that's specifically around that, the mystery of identical harvest. The book is broken up into mysteries, scrolls. Let me see, what was surprise? There's so much that would surprise folks. I think that one of the things that would surprise people is when Abdullah talks about, quibbles, meaning, well, don't eat this, don't, those of us who have, kind of restrictive ways of approaching life. And, that for me was very interesting because, I am I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm celibate, I'm, all of those things. And very interestingly enough, like Abdullah lived most of his life in that Orthodox way. But toward the end of his life, in like the last 20 years or so, and he lived to be 100 plus, the last 20 years or so, he realized that that was not what the calling was, that, holding ourselves back in that way. At that time, he talked about, in order to be holy. And it's very interesting because like now we do a lot of that in order to be healthy, and healthy is the new holy, was a way out of not experiencing the fullness of life. He explained it, not experiencing the fullness of life. And he taught Neville that, when Neville was going to have dinner with these people who were putting out this like abundant feast, that him not receiving the fullness of what they were giving him would not, even though it was food specifically, then how would he expect them to receive the fullness of his message? And I thought that that was really a powerful and interesting thing. And I'll share with you a story when I was recording the audiobook for this book. And I was in the studio in Brooklyn, New York. And my audiobook engineer afterward, he said, because I've never even had coffee. I've never had coffee before. Never had coffee, never had pork. And he said to me, so you want to try some coffee now? And I was like, whoa, wait, I gotta, it's like, he was like, okay, maybe next time. It's like, okay, I'm like, I need a slow burn. But it's a very interesting thought and an interesting concept. And that, experiencing the fullness that life has to offer. We get this one chance in our most beautiful and precious lives to be ourselves. Yes, you come back as someone else, but right now this is your one wild and precious life as you, experiencing the fullness of it. I love that teaching.
And you say we got this one chance. And if we really, truly understand, it's God experiencing life through us, whatever you call that entity, God. But God, when you limit and put all these limitations, and I went through my own period, especially years ago, I had cut out this, I cut out that, and it wasn't as severe as Neville's, but I found myself being really legalistic in my lifestyle, and I was doing all these rituals that really wasn't bringing forth life. And different people have different dietary concerns. So my goal is not to tell anyone, but for me, I had to be mindful. And it made me think about the story of Neville. Abdullah told him that when he came back from Barbados,
Yes.
he would have died.
Yes.
And Neville was like, what do you mean I'm going to die?
That literal death. Yeah.
Yeah. It says figuratively, not literally. And so Neville said as long as he was on the island, he was, eating like he normally would and, making as it were, a headache for his family because, of course, they were in the grocery business. But when he got on ship and he was headed back, everything broke, everything changed. And he said, I had no clue what happened.
Yes.
He says, but my diet and everything else had changed, and Abdullah was correct. And I can, in part, tell you what happened. Abdullah saw a different Neville.
Yes.
And he believed it so that when Neville made the journey back, I only mentioned that we have the power to influence others,
yes, we do.
to encourage, to speak life or death. Abdullah spoke life to Neville, just like when Neville had no clue why he wanted to go to Barbados.
Yes.
It was because his parents saw for him wanting to come home and visit because they had just had an exchange. They had just gotten on the boat, and he said he didn't have any desire, but all of a sudden, my whole point is I tell people, you have to be mindful of what you're thinking or speaking into the lives of others, because even your words, especially for somebody that's not firm on their journey in their decision making, they can be influenced. And we have a whole nation of people that are being influenced by the media, and the media pays billions, if not trillions of dollars to make sure that they can influence. So let's talk about the power of influence, and speaking of Abdullah and Neville and so forth, but even in your own life, how has that played a part?
So this is really important, when we talk about, the media and the messages of the media. And, I always share with people that I talk to that if it is challenging for you, for example, to make a shift and do, in your vision for life and the words that you speak over your life and all of those things, it's not your fault. All of us are inundated every single day from the time that we're born with so many messages about who we should be, about, what we are capable of, about, for women, what we should look like, and for men, and who we are. And we're inundated with those voices, those external voices. And so we have to be very, very diligent, meticulous about the words that we speak, how we speak life into ourselves, as you said, and those around us. And, in the beginning, when you're doing this work, you may find that you need to really just cut off some people, because when with some things that we have a vision for, even when you've been doing this for a long time, even for you and I, there's some things we have a vision of that we cannot speak about to the people around in our lives if we're not strong enough in it ourselves.
Right.
Because the moment that someone says, you really think it's possible, just be happy with your little whatever, or, we die, to use, Abdullah's words, we die to ourselves a little bit in that moment that we have to shrink or play small or hold back on our vision and hold back on who we are. And so it is very, very important in terms of influence. Everyone who is watching this, very much, it's important that you join a community like the community that you have, or come and hang out with me, and my podcasting community and all of that. Be around like-minded people, because influence is incredibly important. And what we are manifesting, for all those folks who are watching and saying, but I've done it. I've read all the books and I've chanted affirmation. I made a couple of vision boards. It didn't work, whatever it is. What you're manifesting is not what you consciously are putting out there or pretending that you think. What you're manifesting is what you think subconsciously in your subconscious mind, the stories that you're telling yourself about you, the stuff that that you are maybe even that you're even afraid to say out loud. Right. That's what you're manifesting. Right. Your beliefs. What do you really, really believe? And so for that reason, having discernment about your influences, the media that you take in, the things that you take in. And again, it's different for everyone. I had the experience you did with food, where, for example, where, I was a raw vegan for a bit, but that was very unhealthy for me. That was very unhealthy for me. I thought that it was something because I saw it in the media and thought that it would be healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for me. But being aware of the influences, the things that we allow into our lives, very, very important. Very important. Monitor the words that you speak. But the words that you speak, half the time, we're not even aware of the words that we speak. I had a conversation with my mom. I remember years ago, she used to say all the time with my aunts, and they'd be on the phone and be like, yeah, poor people like us, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And then I said, Mommy, why do you always say? And she said, I didn't say that. She wasn't even aware of it. Most of us are not even aware of some of the things that we say because we get into a habit of saying them. So if you get with your friends and they're all like, oh, all the good men are taken, men and dogs, men all men cheat, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, oh man, like, why can't I, find any, positive men? You have created a world, your worldview and world vision is that of, horrible, cheating, dogged out men that you've created that, and so being aware of what influences you're allowing in your life is important for every single one of us, not just children, but very much us as adults as well.
Absolutely. You said something and it made me think about a conversation. Several came to mind, but years ago I was having a conversation with my sister and she says, that diabetes runs in our family. I said, not in my family. Mm-hmm. I said, in your family, maybe. I said, but in my household, that's not the case. I said, in part, you're thinking, doing, and practicing the habits of people that deal with diabetes. I said, that's not my lifestyle. Yes. And so, but it would have been easy to say, oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that, So, and as I've gotten older, I do physicals and checkups, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, no medication, no glasses, but that was what I believed about my reality. And so I lived from that reality. Let's talk about people, we talk about imagination becomes reality. And like you stated earlier, everything around us started off as someone's ideal.
Yes.
What tools will they take away from reading this book and understanding the link between thinking and manifestation?
Yes. So when we talk about manifesting from our imagination, it may seem like it's a new concept at first, but again, I want to remind you, you're already doing it. Absolutely. You're already doing it. So for example, if you are a worrier, not a warrior, but a worrier, I come from a family of worriers, you are using your imagination to create things you don't want. By worrying about all of the things that can go wrong. Yeah. And so one of the very simple shifts that we can make is for each and every one of us who are watching this, in the moments before we go to sleep, instead of thinking of all the things that went wrong during the day, all the folks you wish you would have said this and you would have cussed out that one and whatever, use that time instead to have a vision of, use your imagination to think about how you want things to be. Instead of thinking about the life that you don't want, think about the life that you do want as if it already is. Okay. So that is one of the most powerful shifts that we can make. And it sounds so simple, simple doesn't mean easy, but it is a very simple shift. If you've got to maybe write it down or set an alarm or something to remind yourself like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And maybe write it down in a journal and, the next morning, keep a journal so that you can, or even just check it off. Okay, last night I did it. Like that is a very simple shift that you can make. Using your imagination instead of using it to terrorize yourself, like a lot of us do, use it to lift yourself up and lift your life up. And that's really what a vision board is. It's your imagination manifest on pieces of paper that you put on on a board. But here is the shift. And here's why a lot of people, the vision boards don't work. They have not ignited it with the energy, which is the feeling state. Absolutely. How do you feel about the things that you want to manifest? How do you feel about what you want to create. See it from the end, live it from the end. So if you are wanting to manifest, say having a show like Coach DeCarlo, it's not enough to just say, all right, well, I stuck it on my vision board, never thought about it, never did anything, never looked into it, ever again. How do you feel about that? How does it make you feel? What is your vision for it? And then let that vision then inspire you to take step by step by step by step, inspired action toward it. So think about the feeling, adding the feeling to your imagination. It's kind of like the secret sauce that, helps the imagination, really pop into life.
You said something, I want to touch on it. You said you get this image and you said take inspired action in the community. They want to imagine, and they believe that, Neville said, don't do anything. But Neville, if you listen to enough Neville talks, the assumption was that you were going to take inspired action.
Yes. And Neville even speaks directly about action.
He does. He does. Now, why that goes over some people's heads or one ear and out the other ear, I don't know. But like I said, many people in the community, they stuck, as it were, at thinking, imagining, but not being, doing, and having.
Yes.
When you're dealing with a client, how do you help them make the transition from imagining to doing, being, and having?
Yes. So this is so important to me that this is actually the focus of a retreat that I'm doing next year, because I want folks to know that, the being, doing, and havingness of it is why we are here in this earth school. So we could, if you're wanting to, be a swami and, a spiritual person that's going to go to the top of a mountain and live there and live out everything in your imagination and not take, the action toward it, have at it. But for most of us, we want the visceral experience of living our lives. And so action is not a bad thing. Correct. Action is not a negative thing. When we're talking about inspired action, we're not talking about hustle. We're not talking about work until you're dead. We're not talking about doing things that feel out of alignment or out of concert with your nervous system. We're not talking about that. Inspired action means action that ignites you, that is inspired in spirit, that is spirit saying to you, do this, take that call, reach out and contact that person and see what they think of this. That is the inspired action. That is what propels us forward. That is what creates our world the way that we want it to be, the beingness, the doingness, the havingness. And so realizing that it's not a negative thing is a big shift. And I know that this is incredibly controversial in the manifesting community to talk about. So I'm glad that you brought it up. Thinking about, okay, say that you're wanting to call forward a car. Yes. A person, you could think about it, and maybe someone will pull up in front of your house. And, the other day I was asking my daughter, again, she's 2, I said, what kind of car, should we get? And she's like, a purple car. And I'm like, okay. She's like, Mommy, let's look for a purple car. I'm like, okay. And I forgot all about it and moved on. And my block where I live right now, the only reason to come down this block is if you live on this block. Gotcha. The next day we went outside and there was a purple car parked in front of my house. And she said, Mommy, purple car. And I thought first she was talking about the thing the day before. I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, purple car. And I'm like, there's a purple car there, like she manifested a purple car. They're like near instantly, well, she's 2 years old. She's closer to source. She has less limitations on her mind about what is possible and about creating life the way that she wants it to be. There's less of a bridge for her between imagination and reality. Everything is in imagination. Imagining is not a bad thing. A lot of us, we've been taught also that imagining is just for children. Exactly. It's time to put away childish things and time to be an adult and, be
Stop daydreaming,
Stop daydreaming. No, start daydreaming.
Yeah.
Start daydreaming about what is possible. And then the little action steps are the juicy part. It's where you see, the hand of God in your life. Like sometimes, I know that you do the same, like where you look around, you're like, oh my gosh, things happen. A person calls you or shows up and you're like, God is showing off. God, you just showing off. Okay. All right. And God meaning, whatever name you designate, the divine is not as picky as we are as human beings about what that name should be. So God, the divine, the most high, the universe, whatever name, Oladumare, Krishna, whatever, the name of the highest source energy that there is.
Absolutely. I'm even glad that we're talking about that. And I come from a Christian background. And so when I first heard the teachings of Neville, I had to step back because it was contrary to everything that I had been taught up until that moment. Now, of course, like you, I love New Thought teachers. So I've listened to them even before Neville, but he said something that just kind of, like I said, I'm like, wow, and I think the essence of what he was saying at that moment was, you're God's. And I came from a dogmatic Christian background, almost occultish. Mm-hmm. And from that, anything that seemingly said that you're God, it was scoffed on, it was looked down on. Funny thing is, the thing that you said did not attract you was the thing that attracted me to Neville, because initially when I saw him, with his complexion and so forth, I said, because most of the New Thought teachers that I was seeing at that time didn't look like me. Neville came from a European background, but because he was raised in Barbados, there was a ethnicity about him, that kind of showed up in his accent and so forth. And so that was the thing that attracted me. But like I said, the dogmas and everything that I have been taught, God looks like this, God looks like, and, even today I hear people and I understand because I was them. Mm-hmm. But Master Teacher says God is spirit.
Yes.
And those who worship God, not even male, female, spirit. Yes. Now, we use these vernaculars to help us better grasp who God is. But in essence, God is energy, and that energy is in us, making us also divine.
Yes.
We, to even say that, and so Reverend Ike was way ahead of his time.
Yes.
Neville Goddard, Abdullah, these men, and there's plenty of females, I could talk about, Florence and so forth, were way ahead of their time and understanding that we're spiritual beings having this human experience. Yes. But the human experience isn't ultimately who we are. We can put on a new state immediately and become somebody else. Now, many of us believe this is just who I am. That's the deception.
That's the deception. That's the illusion.
Let's talk about it.
Yes. So I want to just go back and talk about a couple of things that you said. So yes, like you said, the master teacher said, if you look in the good book, it says, all of these things that I have done and more, you can do too. Have I not told you? Is it not written in your word that ye are gods? This is all in there. Yeah. It's all in there. It's just what we have been directed to. And one of the things that excited me also about Abdullah was Neville saying that even though Abdullah was a rabbi, he learned more about Christianity from Abdullah than, anyone, that Abdullah was a teacher also of Christianity. Absolutely. He was a teacher of religion as well. And so I love that about him. And as you said, the essence of the teachings is that, you are God, we are spirit, we are energy. And I actually had the blessing and the fortune of having had my father, who he is a minister. I say was because he had a church, but he doesn't have a church at this time. But he used to have a church in Brooklyn, and his religion, it's in Guyana, it's not here in the United States. It's called Spiritual Baptist, and it is a Christian based religion combined with indigenous African teachings. And I remember being a kid and him saying, God is not outside of you. God is here within you. And that was also very, very shifting for me in how I looked at the world. And I say definitely that was an advantage to have that shift, at an early age and have that idea, that concept.
I had talked to someone else, another guest sometime back, and he was saying the same thing that you just stated. I didn't have the good fortune. I was raised pretty much in a religious background. So even when the name Reverend Ike came up, for example, it was as a criticism. It wasn't as a positive thing. But having a parent to tell the child, even if the child doesn't understand it, I'm seeing the importance for a parent saying God is within you and understanding that, because in understanding that, like I said, even at the moment, we may not fully understand as children. When we grow up, we're not bound as much by what we call traditional religion and so forth, because the goal of most religion really is not liberation, but bondage, and so it's not to enlighten you. Matter of fact, it's to keep you under the thumb of that particular religious organization. Yes. And like I state often in my group, my goal is not to tell you what to think, but to tell you that you are thinking. And depending upon what it is that you're thinking is going to determine what's showing up in your world. There's so much. I got a board full of stuff that I want to, we haven't even touched on. But as we're winding down, let's talk about what are those common things that keep the everyday person from manifesting the life that they desire.
Yes. So every single one of us has blocks. We have beliefs, limiting beliefs, blocked beliefs in certain areas. I do, you do, every single one of us do, because we have our lived experience. And then we have stuff that we've inherited that is not even our own issues and our own stuff, stories that we've been told about who we are and our place in the world, stories that society has told us about who we are and our place in the world. And so for some of us, maybe love is very easy to manifest for someone, but money is harder, or vice versa. Exactly. We all have different blocks and different challenges. So, for each of us, dissolving those blocks, and you can go about it a number of different ways by either working specifically with dissolving those blocks, or if you have a stronger energy and you can just work in the vision and stay in the vision by itself, that is the fastest way. But again, we're human beings. Correct. And so, most of us cannot necessarily hold. I'm not going to say most of us, I'm not going to put that on you watching this. Thank you. Let me correct and clear my stuff up. Some of us cannot necessarily just take something and hold the vision, because we're also holding 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and beyond of programming and conditioning up until that point. So being able to do things that shift you out of the, kind of knocking the legs off of your limiting beliefs. That's why you want to work with, a coach or a spiritual teacher or a practitioner, to do this. People will say, oh, well, it seems now like, why are there so many coaches? I feel like that's because this is how many are needed to get to the next evolution. And that's why there are so many coaches, because we're all in a state of rapid evolution. And, coaches have coaches, teachers have teachers, spiritual teachers have teachers. None of us knows every single thing. And so, allowing yourself to move forward in this knowledge and not be limited by ideas like, oh, well, I see people, sometimes on forums saying things like, oh, well, I'm not going to pay for any books or courses or whatever. Or, well, if that's the energy and the vibration that you're putting forward in the world, the life that you're creating is one of scarcity, lack, and fear. That's your vision. If your vision is one of prosperity and abundance, in prosperity of love, prosperity of health and well-being, prosperity of money, prosperity of friendship, that's a different way that you approach the world. So think about all of the things that you are doing and how you are creating your life and how you're moving forward. Every single thing that you're doing, how we do anything is how we do everything. And so if you are moving in the vibration and the frequency of lack, of scarcity, of not a good enoughness, not unworthiness, if that is your energy, you're going to create more of that. That's where,
Absolutely.
so you want to be very, very clear about recalibrating yourself, shifting, reprogramming yourself. You want to program yourself, to succeed, to win,
Yeah.
however, whatever that means for you. And so one of the tools I have a lot of, it was very important for me to put a lot of processes and tools
Good.
in this book
Good.
because we do need it.
Certainly.
And so the book was originally, it was funny because my publisher was not happy about that part because the book was originally supposed to be a hardcover, but then I insisted on keeping all of those exercises and everything in. And so we wanted it to be affordable. So we had to move to it being a paperback because I was like, no, they need the processes. The processes are not just some extra fluff. We need these processes in order to help us to shift. So one of the things that I have in the book are decrees, and those are extended affirmations that you could read, on a daily basis to begin to reprogram yourself.
Certainly.
We need to be able to rewrite the programming that we have inherited, that we have created for ourselves, and rewrite the story so that we get to live our lives more fully, more juicy, more, and be who we were born to become, who we were born to be.
You said quite a bit in those statements. And the biggest thing that I want people to understand is that if you want to expedite your experience, your learning, your knowledge, then it behooves you to partner with somebody who's already gone ahead of you. Because now you're not listen, I've spent 15, 20 years learning the stuff that I know. You, in a couple of hours' time, speaking to the audience, can glean from that 20 years of experience, or you can go through 20, 30 years or a lifetime trying to figure it out on your own. So the benefit of a spiritual teacher, a counselor, a coach, whatever that expertise is shortcutting, as it were, your learning curve. So now my question is, how do they reach you? How do they get a hold of you?
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much for this conversation. This first of many. I know this is just
Absolutely.
the first of many.
Absolutely.
Thank you for this conversation. And again, for creating a safe space for us to have these conversations about these ideas and for people to realize that, you don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay in a life that you don't enjoy. If you think that, if they think it's too expensive for coaching, all right, well, it's a lot more expensive to stay stuck for the next 10 years trying to piece it together yourself, So thank you for creating this conversation in this sacred space. So they can find From Imagination to Reality, Secret Manifestation Lessons in the Law of Assumption from Abdullah Master Alchemist on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy books. And I want to make a special ask that please leave reviews. Reviews are very helpful. Leave reviews for Coach DeCarlo. Leave reviews for my work. It tells the algorithms that this is something that you're interested in. I know there are a lot of lurkers and content people who watch this who will never comment. Put a comment, put something, because it, again, trains the algorithm to know that this is worthy content, and it helps other people to be able to see it. My website is womanifesting.com. So like manifesting.com, but womanifesting.com. And my social media, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Abiola TV. Like TV, like Transformation and Victory. And then I have a YouTube channel as well. I'm on YouTube at Planet Abiola. And that YouTube channel is also podcasted at the Goddess Temple Podcast. So I look forward to folks hanging out with me. Oh, and I have a free gift for your audience. I have a bunch of freebies. So if you go to womanifesting.com, I have a free Goddess of Receiving workbook. But I also have a free gift that is specific to From Imagination to Reality. So when you purchase the book, when you purchase the book in any format, whether you buy it on Kindle, whether you buy the audio book, go to fromimaginationtoreality.com and put in your receipt number. You'll see a little form, put in your receipt number, and you will receive a free From Imagination to Reality workbook.
Wow.
And I'm doing a free 30-day mini course
Wow.
on YouTube. And if you want to take a deep dive, Hay House has a From Imagination to Reality course that I've done, a deep dive course that you can find at tinyurl.com/Abiola on TV. tinyurl.com/Abiola on TV for folks who want to take everything to the next level.
Wow. Now listen, guys, so that you don't have to wonder if you got all that information down, in the comments, it's going to be pinned. All of her contact information will be pinned in the comments of this conversation, and it'll also be in the conversational notes. So don't worry about not having to, I didn't get all that, or I didn't write it down, or how did you spell that, or whatever. We're going to have it pinned in the comments, and we're going to also have it in the regular comments. So everything, she's going to submit that information to me, so you guys will also have it. But also, listen, she's got the book out there. You can get it in audio. You can get it in Kindle. You can get the physical book. So there's different, depending upon your modality of learning, she's got it out there. She's also supplying those who purchase the book with a workbook. And this 30-day challenge that she's also putting out there. Listen, that stuff in itself is a $1,000 workshop for many people. That's what they offer as a $1,000 workshop. She's offering to you as a gift for simply purchasing the book and going out and just acknowledging and showing your receipt of the purchase, and you get that stuff for free. Like I said, in many cases, people charge a great deal of money. Our goal ultimately is your transformation. Now, as you know, if you go out to my YouTube channel, I offer a lot of free, but there's also going to be those things that you have to make an investment in yourself. But like I said, the key to that investment, if you get with Abiola, the key to the investment with her is you shortcutting your manifestation journey. And so that the stuff, the heartaches and the challenges that she's faced, you don't have to. And I know that she's going to be a great resource. It's funny, she was talking about the benefit of giving back. And the reason why we're having this conversation is because she had put something in the Facebook group about her book. She did something that most people that promote their book in my Facebook group don't do, and so they don't get shown, is she asks. She says, listen, this may not be something that you want to promote, and that's okay. And simply by her asking, it opened my heart to at least put it out there. I said, I don't have anything to lose, but she put it out there. And then I reached out to her and we started a conversation, and here we are today. And she's right. This is going to be the first of many. I look forward to speaking with her and sharing, and us maybe even partnering and doing something together. But guys, take advantage of this knowledge, this wisdom that she's poured into about the teachings of Abdullah. But understand, this is not just Abdullah's journey. It's not just Neville's journey. It's your journey. And if you want to grow on that journey, begin pouring into yourself. This is, I think, a less than a $20 investment if you got the book online. It's worth your transformation. Get the book, give her a review. You know, reviews are the lifeblood for authors that people say, listen, I'm interested. So as we're closing down, anything else for the listening audience?
Oh, thank you so much. Like I said, you just completely it just, for me, like this, like I'll be energetically high all day from this beautiful conversation. And as you said, you know, that for me also, this has been, 20 plus year journey. Yeah. I've spent, like you, thousands and thousands of dollars in my own personal development, education, and so for people to be able to have a shortcut, for those of us who create, like for you as a creator with this show, what we create, we're creating the tools that we wish would have existed at a point in time for ourselves. We're creating that for others to have an easier time. So, thank you so much for everyone who showed up for this conversation and who is here. And I am looking forward to more. Thank you, Coach DeCarlo.
It's been a pleasure. And like I said, her links will be in the comments and the bio and so forth. So look for those to reach out to her. You won't regret it. It'll be a pleasure. And what you'll take away will be far more than whatever investment time or whatever you put into it. So reach out to her and learn from Abiola. The name itself means wealth, wisdom, prosperity. So it already tells you what you're stepping into. So if those things, and it doesn't stop just that. We're not just talking money. We're talking lifestyle. We're talking relationships, every aspect of your life. So it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.